What's up? Hope everyone's having a good day and is ready for another episode in the series we like to call Underrated Throwers. Today we got Kibwe Johnson, former, I guess not American record holder, but the last thrower for America, for the U.S. to throw 80 meters. Before Rudy Winkler and Daniel Ha. He was a multiple-time American champion, a two-time Olympian, one-time Olympic finalist in 2012, and he made the 2016 Olympics as well. He made several world champ teams. I think the only final he made was in 2011 in Daegu, but I could be wrong about that. But in 2012 Olympics, he finished 8th place. This is a throw of him throwing 80 meters. And I think he's just underrated because, one, I don't think a lot of people know him. And two, I think he's one of the most influential hammer throwers for the U.S. in quite some time. He was ever since before him, Lance Steele was the last person to do something to even make an Olympic final for the U.S. in hammer. So that right there is already pretty good. And he's also the last 80-meter thrower that the U.S. had since Lance Steele at the time, before, obviously, Daniel Ha and Rudy Winkler. But he kind of put America a little back on the map and kind of gained a little bit more respect for the U.S. on the international scene, because the U.S. wasn't really that great in hammer throw for a long time until Kibwe came. And I think a lot of his technical philosophy, he brought a lot of European influence to the U.S. scene, which is why I think we've seen a big growth in men's hammer and women's hammer recently. Because he trained with Koji Murafushi and Tor Gustafsson. Gustafsson. I can't speak right now, nor can I pronounce names. But two very influential hammer throwers in their own right, and Tor is a really, really influential hammer coach as well, one of the best ever. So, and he brought a lot of technical prowess and a lot of European thinking to U.S. hammer, which I think has greatly impacted hammer, and why I think hammer is, I think right now, our second best besides shot put for the U.S. Hammer is our second best for both men and women. Has really seen a growth in the past couple years. When our two best people for women and men have thrown over 80 meters. So I think he's just very influential and has made and has allowed the U.S. to make great strides on the NCAA scene and pro circuit for the U.S. So that's why I think he's underrated. And two, I mean, a lot of younger people probably won't know him because he hasn't won. I mean, he's a two-time Pan American champ, and I'll link his height, weight, and personal best and accomplishments in the video description. Right here is his personal best throw, 80 meters. He's thrown 80 a couple times. But let's watch this full speed. Let me back this up a little so you can see the full video. So right off the bat, really high first turn, really high point, which you don't see. You're taught to be very flat on one, which I personally agree with. He kind of throws a lot like Koji in a lot of ways, which makes sense because they were training partners for a while. But let's break this down. So right off the bat, really nice catch. And really nice push. You notice he's not turning his feet until the ball reaches past zero. And then really high point, kind of Koji-esque. I think he has a little bit higher of a high point than Koji, but you'll see a lot of similarities in Koji's technique. And one of the biggest things that I really like in Kibwe's technique and I think that he really brought to the scene, is that you're taught to push across. But what he really is thinking right now, and I know this because I've watched a bunch of Tor, his a lot of his technical influences, like views of Hammer, is he's thinking he wants the longest point to be at 135 at this right here. The hammer should be at its longest point because that's the direction you're going to be going. So the longest point of the hammer should be the direction you're throwing, and that's what sets your linear direction. All right? Because the hammer, despite it being rotational, you want to think of it a lot more linearly. You want to think push, like you're walking backwards the second you get here. So the second you catch, you're walking back, and then boom. Really nice. And you notice that maybe you don't notice because you don't know what he feels, but he's thinking core tight. In your first turn, so your entry, your core should be the tightest. All right? You should be thinking about tightening your core, resisting the hammer, and that's going to help a lot with your counter. Really nice. And you notice he's always waiting until until the hammer at least reaches his right side before he starts to pick up. And he's not actually picking up his foot until he's here, until the hammer's at 180. Now, there are some things I don't like. Like, I think he has a way too high of a high point. But the main thing he's doing is he's really moving the hell out of this ball. And that's the most important thing. Like Ethan Katzberg, the defending world champ, he's not the most technical person, but he does the most important thing. He moves the freaking ball. And at the end of the day, if you can just move the ball and are able to just counter it, you'll throw far. And he's long in all the right places. Like, normally your orbit shouldn't be this high, but that if you can handle those kind of forces, if you're able to handle this kind of counter, then it theoretically can go far. And he threw 80 meters, and Koji threw 84, so who am I to say? But the other thing I think he does really well is hanging on the hammer. So right here, good counter. And he's just hanging on the hammer. Like, he's just hanging down. So as the hammer goes up, he's just sitting down, dropping this left knee, and really just hangs on the hammer. Because you don't want to think about pushing, because you can only push if 2 feet are on the ground. All right? You want to hang on the hammer here. All right? And just resist it. The acceleration from the hammer comes from this part. Once his right foot comes down, this is what happens. This is what accelerates right here. Once you get past here, you're not really accelerating it anymore. You're just hanging on and countering. But you want to think, so if we consider this when you're facing the back of the ring, the front, you're shortening the front and really making the back long. That's what you want to think. Long to short. And you sitting back and the hammer going back and you resisting, it what really accelerates it forward. What really accelerates it. And then you're just hanging on and countering. Right here, you're just sitting back and then shorten. And when you shorten, you got to think about sitting back with your whole body. Sitting back and then just letting it hang. Because just like in shot put and discus, you can only accelerate the implement if 2 feet are on the ground. So if you're trying to do a bunch of stuff while you don't have both feet on the ground, you're going to end up pulling with this left shoulder and doing a bunch of funky stuff and pulling it off its orbit. And orbit and hammer is probably the most important thing. If you have a screwed up orbit, you're not going to be able to push it right. You're not you're going to move in all the wrong places. You're going to probably either fall or hit the cage or release really low, and it's just going to be all screwed up. So he gets here, really nice, catches super deep, and then really just works back. And you want to think about when you release, working back and having the pressure on this right foot. You don't want to have this pressure, and I've said this a billion times, do not release with weight, that much weight on your left foot, because it's going to pull you forward. You want to think about, it's just, the release is just another turn, and you're just sitting hard and just blocking. Sorry, not blocking, but you're just releasing it. That's it. You just let go. Don't think about adding anything extra. It's just another turn, and then at its high point, you just let it go. That's it. But you notice how he leans back, and then he's kind of over his right foot. That's what you want. That means that he's fully, and actually his left foot is up a little, and that's good. That's what you want. That's why a lot of people think that it's a mistake when hammer throwers kind of like go like this and don't stick it. It's because they're countering so hard and so far back. When you release the hammer, you're gonna go back a little. Now, some people do stick it, and I think that's the best type, but this isn't wrong. This is just you countering the hell out of the ball. So don't think that's a mistake if you do that in practice. All right. So that's my spiel on Kibwe. There isn't that much really to it. But yeah, I just think he's one of the more influential hammer throwers in the past 20 years at least. And yeah, one of the greatest American hammer throwers ever. So yeah, I'll link his personal best height, weight. I think he's around 6'2", 236, so not that big in terms of weight. And then his notable accomplishments in the video description. And I hope everyone has a good day. See y'all later.